Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I will be using my new Oriental coaster moulds from Moulds and Shapes, and sticking with the Oriental theme I'm going to be using some beautiful Chinese themed papers in epoxy resin to make some gorgeous coasters just in time, well, just a little bit late actually, to celebrate the Chinese New Year. If you want to see how to achieve beautiful results using paper in resin, stay tuned and enjoy the video. Before I could make today's coasters, I needed to decide on a coaster mould, and that wasn't difficult because I received this box of moulds from Moulds and Shapes, which is one of my favourite places to get my moulds from. This was a surprise package from Moulds and Shapes, so I had no idea what was in there. Well, I had a bit of an idea because I know the kind of things they make, but I didn't know which moulds they would be, so I couldn't wait to see which moulds I had received. Let's have a look. So this one is the Oriental coaster holder mould, so I could guess what was coming next. Yes, the Oriental coaster mould. Isn't that a lovely shape? So that's what I'm going to be using today. I also received this gorgeous Cascade Daisy tray mould, which is really big and heavy. I love it. I love the quality of it and can't wait to have a go with that one in another video. So thank you, Moulds and Shapes. Right, as I've already mentioned in today's video, I'm using paper, and this is quite a complex shape to be working with, so I needed a very precise template, and the most easy way to get a precise template is to pour plaster of Paris into the mould, and then you've got something nice and solid to draw around as a template. And of course, that's only if it's your first time using the mould. If you've used it before, you've probably already got some coasters and a coaster holder that you can draw around. But this was my first time, so I used plaster of Paris. So I wanted to go with the Chinese theme this week to tie in with the recent Chinese New Year festivities and celebrations. And I thought, yeah, because they're Oriental coasters, a Chinese theme will work perfectly. And so I went through all my old patterned papers and found some birdsong papers from Graphics 45, and the background papers are a basic grey paper, I think, but I can't remember exactly which basic grey paper it is. So yeah, my papers are very old and a lot of them aren't in the original packaging that they used to be in. So yeah, anyway, I drew around my template with the background papers and cut out the images of the Chinese ladies to go over the backgrounds. To embellish the design, I wanted to go with some of these tassels because I always think they look very Chinese. They make me think of Chinese art when I see them, so I thought they would work really well. And so yeah, I was just having a look to see how they looked, and they did look good. So there's all of the ones I've cut out ready to go into the resin. I wanted to distress the edges of the pictures. I'd already done it before I started filming this little bit, but I thought afterwards, I should have shown you that. So I just took an old brown ink pad and I'm just adding some ink to the edges to give them a more distressed and aged look, and that's all I did there, and I think it really helped a lot actually. The next step is optional. If you want, you can put your paper straight into resin, but I wanted to try spray varnish on my paper this time because in the past I've found that the resin darkens the paper quite a lot, and I wanted to see if sealing the paper first with spray varnish would help with that. And I actually did a little practice to show you the difference. So here's one that I'd practiced with a couple of days days earlier. The one I'm pointing to there has been varnished, and as you can see, it hasn't gone as dark and kind of translucent as the one on the left. The one on the left kind of went a little bit see-through, as you can see there. I hope you can see the difference. I could see the difference. And so after doing that test piece, I decided it was definitely worth spray varnishing all my pieces of paper. Now it's time for the resin. This week, all my resins I'm using are from Let's Resin, and I think Let's Resin's resin is great for coasters because of its high heat resistance. The first layer is going to be the fast cure resin because I want to just get it done quickly, have it cured quickly so that I can get on with the next layer. And as I've just shown you there, I'm using my levelling table, which is also from Let's Resin, so I know everything's nice and level. I will leave links and discount codes for all the products used today in the video description. So Let's Resin's Fast Cure Resin is a 1:1 mixing ratio by volume, and I've mixed up 8 fluid ounces. I'm just covering the bottom of all the cavities of the coaster moulds. I didn't want much in there, just enough to cover the bottoms. This is quite a thick resin, so it took a while just to let it settle into place, and so I was kind of guessing a little bit that to make sure I was pouring in enough, but yeah, it was just about right really. Once my resin was all settled in place, I gave it a little bit of a blast with my heat gun. Not much, you've got to think about your moulds. You don't want to damage your moulds with too much heat, but a little bit of use of a heat gun is fine, or a little spray of isopropyl alcohol is also good, but don't use too much because that's also not good for moulds. I know people tend to use it all the time and say, oh, it's much better than using heat, but I don't know if I agree with that. The alcohol is also not good for moulds, so use it sparingly. Okay, so the bubbles were gone and it was time to put the paper in, and it was just really a case of carefully layering it on top of the resin and giving it a little bit of a poke around with a lollipop stick to make sure that there were no pockets of air trapped underneath. Sometimes the resin would come up over the top and help the paper to sink to the bottom, but I didn't mind either way. I didn't mind if it stayed in the middle or sank to the bottom. It was fine both ways. I had a little bit of resin left over, so I added some gold leaf into the leftover resin and gave it a really good stir until it was just the right thickness to apply around some of the edges. I didn't want too much in there. I just wanted to give it a little bit of interest around the edges where there wasn't going to be much going on. Okay, now I need to apologise for the fuzziness of the picture. It was not good because at night time my camera just doesn't perform well under artificial light. I don't know why. Maybe I need to change the settings, but yeah, I never get a good picture when I'm working at night. And I had to work at night because I wanted to do this step while my resin was still tacky. The 4-hour cure resin was still a little bit tacky at this stage, and so what I wanted to do was add my pictures to it so that they would stick in position, and then when I added the final layer of resin, they would be stuck down and they wouldn't float up to the top. So I'll keep this bit to a minimum because it's so fuzzy, but you get the idea, don't you? All I'm doing is putting all the pictures into position along with the tassels. Okay, so the next day we're back to a bit of a better picture with some natural daylight, and the resin has cured, so it was time to just make sure everything was in place for the top coat of resin. I have added some paper flowers off camera, but that was very straightforward. It was just a case of sticking them down, and now I need to secure the tassels. I didn't want them floating up when the next layer of resin was added. So what I decided to use was some UV resin from Let's Resin, and I just put it on top of the tassel and smoothed it down with my finger before curing it. Must correct myself, I didn't use my finger, I used my silicone spatula. Right, once everything was anchored down, it was time to add the rest of the resin. I mixed up 6 fluid ounces of Let's Resins regular resin, which is a brilliant heat-resistant resin, and just carefully added it to the top. I was aware that because there was a lot of stuff layered there, I could have a lot of bubbles escaping when I wasn't expecting it. So I did kind of sit with it and keep coming back to it after I'd finished sitting with it for quite a long time, because some bubbles from underneath the paper did find the way to the surface. So it did require quite a lot of babysitting. Okay, it's night time again, so it's quite fuzzy. I'm going to be showing you all of these close up in the daylight, so this is going to be quite brief. All I wanted to show you was the next step, which was the colouring in of the edges with my chrome markers from Let's Resin. This set of 6 markers comes with 3 in silver and 3 in gold, and the 3 of each there's a fine tip, a angled tip and a bullet tip. So the fine tip one, as you can see here, is really good for getting into those really small little cracks. Because it's such a detailed edge to this mould, there were those bits that you just can't get into with regular markers. So that fine tip one in the set is perfect for that. And then I used the other marker, the bigger angled marker, for the rest of the edges. So yeah, I'm not going to show you all of that because it did take me a while, and I know you just want to see them finished now, and I want to show you them finished. So let's have a look. The first thing you might notice is that it's a bit lumpy in places where the tassel has risen to the top. Didn't quite anchor them down enough with the UV resin. So a top coat would have been really good just to give them a perfectly smooth surface, but I ran out of time. I really needed to get the video published, so I missed that step out. But it's still heat resistant because I used the Let's Resin resin, which has that heat resistance. So it's not like I needed to put a top coat on at all. You know, with some resins you need to put a heat resistant top coat on. So they're already heat resistant and they'll be fine without the top coat. And I love them. Do you? I love how the papers have just brought them to life. Absolutely gorgeous. The beauty about making coasters in this way with the paper is that you have so much more control over what the end result will be like. When you're making coasters with resin effects, they can be absolutely gorgeous, but there's always a bit of a chance that they won't turn out good. With paper, you have that control, and I think that's why I like it. So yeah, I just love them. Do you? And there's so many papers you can get. You know, the world's your oyster. There's so many patterned papers on the market. So yeah, have fun if you have a go at this. So of course I had to take a few photographs, which is always hard with resin because of the reflection, but let's have a look at the photos. And there we are. You know, I think we can expect a few more paper in resin videos coming up because I think I'm hooked. And I've got so many papers from my paper crafting days just waiting to be used. So yeah, expect to see more of this in future videos. So we've come to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to. And I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching and bye for now.